Welcome to Connecting with Coincidence with psychiatrist Bernard David Beitman, MD. Dr. Beitman is the founder of the Coincidence Project. The project encourages people like you to tell each other coincidence stories. To learn more about Dr. Beitman's work, put Connecting with Coincidence in your web browser. You'll find his book, his Psychology Today blog, and the interviews from this podcast. And now your host, Bernard Beitman, MD.
Welcome to Connecting with Coincidence. I am your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD. Yes, this is Connecting with Coincidence 2.0. If you wish to support us here at Connecting with Coincidence, please like and subscribe to us. Increasing subscriber numbers increases our reach. And if you are watching us on YouTube, please write us one of your coincidence stories in the comments section or something else. We will reply. Microserendipity. Microserendipity. What is microserendipity? These are the small coincidences of daily life that inform us in decision making. Not a big deal, not major impact synchronicities, useful bits of information that we hardly notice beyond their usefulness. I've been working on a vision statement for the Coincidence Project, looking for a short, impactful, intriguing, simple few words that capture what we're doing. The recent candidate was illuminating hidden connections. A Coincidence colleague indirectly suggested replacing the word connections with the word threads. Threads to create a sweater to keep all of us warm during the coming challenge of the looming sixth major extinction of life on our planet, which we're trying to reverse, I hope. I am trying to help. A few hours later, I heard Taylor Swift singing about someone she longed to be with. The song is titled Invisible Thread. I took this to be a further suggestion to use the word threads rather than connections. With the advice of a third person, I kept our vision to illuminating hidden connections rather than illuminating hidden threads. And I conclude for you that coincidences are guides, not commands, that you decide. Our guest today is Michelle Kempton, who is a master certified coach, passionate about leadership development and organizational change. As founder of Kempton Coaching and Training, she's an expert in the coach approach to leadership. With 18 years of experience in course design, she provides experiential learning in 30 countries. She has facilitated courses in multiple industries, including medicine, law, sports, education, banking, and Fortune 500 companies. And she loves cheese, dark chocolate, and soulful conversations, as well as you will see, the color purple. Welcome to the show, Michelle. Glad to have you with us.
And a partridge in a pear tree. It's always difficult for me to hear those lists of, when someone asks for a bio or an intro.
Anyway. And a partridge in a pear tree. Okay, well, we may as well warn our audience that this may happen again, this song thing. I'd like to start off the show, and we will today, with a story by you, a coincidence story by you. So we talked about them, but there's really one good one that we want to start with. So please tell us that story.
Okay, so this was about 18 years ago, and I was in a leadership program, and there was a day, a 24-hour, a day of silence. We were meant to not speak for 24 hours. And the first morning of this day, or the first 3-4 hours, they sent us out to do whatever we wanted out in nature. And I decided I was going to go meditate in the forest. So this was a beautiful place in Sebastopol in California. And I went into the forest and I was looking for the perfect spot, which is kind of funny because what is a perfect spot to meditate? But I was looking for the perfect spot. And as I was looking for the perfect spot, well, I eventually found it. When I sat down, I realized that in my search for the perfect spot, I'd gotten a little disoriented, and that was going to distract me from being able to meditate. As soon as it came into my mind, you don't know where you are exactly. You should get up and get your bearings and then sit down and meditate. I could no longer relax. So I stood up and I thought, okay, I'll just get oriented. It'll only take me a moment. And as I, looked in different directions, I realized I didn't know in which direction to walk to find my way out. So I just tried, walking in this direction. It felt right. And it wasn't the way out. So then I turned, and what started as 5-10 minutes to get myself oriented turned into hours. And what happened in that period of time was really interesting, because it was a point in my life where I felt like I had done a lot of personal work, and I had read The Power of Now like 3 times. I felt like I was a ninja with being able to control my presence and my thoughts. So when I started going into worry, I know I've got this. And I pulled my attention into the here and now. I'm fine, slowly walking, I'll find my way. And then all of a sudden a voice, you don't know where you are. And this is when it started getting really, I started feeling very anxious, because then I was telling myself, you're going to ruin this leadership program for everybody, because when you don't come back, they said they would call us back with the sound of a loud drum. And I thought, okay, they're going to sound the drum. I'm not going to come back. They're going to have to send a search party out for me. I'm going to ruin the program. It's going to be humiliating. That was my biggest, worry, is ruining everybody's experience. So really it was my ego. And then I would say, no, you know how to do this right here, right now, power of now. I'm fine. I'd calm down and I'd, keep walking. I'll find my way out. So it was like schizophrenia. I was in and out of presence and anxiety and really bruised ego. And, how could this happen to me? Why me? How me? And then I thought, no, right? So it happened until I finally I was muddy, sweaty. I would start running in the direction when I thought it was the right direction. And then suddenly the trees were different. And I thought, I'm not even in the same forest anymore. I started panicking. It started getting worse. It started getting more difficult, Bernie, to get back to here and now. So now my ego had taken over. My fear had taken over. I was a mess. I really was a mess. I started crying. I got myself calm. I started crying again. I thought, oh my God. And when the trees were different, I thought, how far in my effort to get out of here have I run in the wrong direction? So it felt like hours. And one thing that was very strange is there were a couple times where I came to the same place. And I thought, oh my God, I'm stuck in some kind of twilight zone. I later found out that when you get lost, you tend to turn right. So it's not all that abnormal to find yourself in the same place. But it was like, I think I reached my kind of limit in terms of managing my state. I really was a mess. And I reached such a limit that I decided I give up. I think I was emotionally exhausted. That's what I was. And so I decided, okay, I surrender. And I laid down in the forest and I calmed my heartbeat down, because I had been running with a heavy coat on. I was so sweaty and muddy. And I just laid down and I remember seeing that the trees are quite tall in that part of California. And there was the sunlight came through the trees, and it was like I suddenly, after being in this state for hours, felt peace. And I let go of it all. Okay. So maybe I end up spending the night in the forest. So maybe they have to come after me, come looking for me. There was no charge anymore with any of it. It was like, okay, I surrender. And in that moment, once my heartbeat calmed down and I could breathe and I was completely fine, I turned my head and I saw this tree that was like an old, it was like deadwood almost or something. It was a tree that was broken and pointing. And I knew when I saw the tree, absolutely knew that the tree was pointing out that was the way out. And here is the bizarre part, Bernie. I got up confidently, calmly, and started walking in the direction that the tree was pointing. And in about, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes, I was at the edge of the wood as the drum was sounding. And there was a colleague, a fellow leadership participant on the hill waving at me. I was lost the exact allotted time. It's just absolutely bizarre. But what I think I expressed to you before was that of all the things that I learned in that year, 4 different retreats, all these different things that we did for leadership, that was definitely the most powerful learning experience that I had. Because I realized that's it. The way out is surrender. Whenever your ego takes over, or you're afraid, or you're lost, your way out is to surrender. Because when you surrender, you can see a sign, you can get information that will get you back into connection, back into the now, and able to see some kind of guidance. But the ego, that's the block. That's the block to being able to connect to synchronicity. When you think you're controlling everything, when you're trying to control everything.
I saw the sign.
I saw the sign. Opened up my eyes. I think that's it. And saw the sign.
I opened
Yes.
up my eyes and saw the sign.
Saw the
Yeah,
sign.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we got here, ladies and gentlemen. She saw the sign, but
Absolutely.
what did it take for you to see the sign? And that's what you're describing. And people who listen to my podcast, some of them know that I love trees, and that it's a tree that pointed the way for you.
Yeah.
I got trees telling me how to do stuff. I mean, here, how, first of all, there's the tree there, been pointing in that direction for quite a long time before you saw it.
Right.
But how that tree pointing in that direction at a different time frame than we go by, how that tree happened to be pointing in the direction you needed to know, we'll
Right.
never know that one, but how you could interpret it as that.
Well, right. So here's the thing. I believe that I saw it coming in. So it was somewhere in my memory. And when I turned and looked at it, I knew that it pointed the way out because I think I saw it coming in. I just knew when I saw it that was pointing the way out.
Well, that is an additional piece of information that's vital here. It's a little bit like putting a marker on. I do this when I go in the woods too, as I try to mark familiar places when I go off, so that when I come back, I know the way back. And you somewhat relatively subconsciously marked that as one of the ways to get back.
Right. Well, definitely subconscious, because it wasn't conscious. It's just somehow that's the magic of it for me, is that somehow when I had completely let go and I turned my head and I saw it, I knew. And
Yeah.
I think in that moment, I thought, oh, I saw that coming in, whatever, but I knew
But,
very, very clearly, this is the way out.
and the fun thing with this stuff, we don't know how we know these things. And who knows, maybe you didn't see it. Maybe you didn't come that way or something, but you could, and the more magical way I like to think about this one is that you somehow recognize that the tree was connected to where you were going, that branch or whatever that was connected somehow to where you wanted to be, to the drums, and that that connection you could pick up in the moment. That's where I prefer. I like that one. To add to what might have been a subconscious recognition.
Well, and the thing is, so first of all, I'm not sure that I saw it or not. That I think, that's what my mind went to but when I remember that moment, it wasn't like, oh, I remember that tree. It was that tree is pointing the way out. Those are two different.
Yeah, those are two different things. Those
observations.
are two different, and we'll leave it at that. But it's this intuition capacity, and we blame intuition for a lot of good things where we don't know how we know it, but we know it. And then we try to take it apart, which is what I'm very interested in being able to do, like take it apart, but sometimes we can't. But this is like intuition. Now, the important thing about this story 18 years ago in the woods in Sebastopol, north of San Francisco, somewhat near the Russian River and not too far from the Pacific Ocean, and somewhere near Bolinas, where I have spent a little time, in a beautiful part of the world that's absolutely crazy, nuts, and wonderful, and all kinds of stuff. You got the best lesson you ever got at a leadership conference. And that lesson was calm down. Anger is also one that gets in the way. Anxiety and anger will do that. And just simply about the way we're programmed is that when you got all that static, which also includes too many wrong thoughts, I mean wrong just because they're a waste of time, they don't really get you anywhere, including worry, anxiety, but a lot of other things like that. To be able to then find a way, and there's so many people going out there and saying, this is my way for you to calm yourself down. Oh, please don't do that to all of us. This is the way you found that it works. That doesn't mean that the other person is going to find that. So please represent it as your way, rather than, and that it might work for other people and probably will, but not for everybody.
Right.
Please do that. I mean, it's one of the getting to me one of my pet peeves about wisdom coaches and people who know the right way, and this is the consciousness is going to be this way, and they got some truth in it, but it has to be filtered through the experience of the other person.
Yeah, of the individual. No, I absolutely agree. I've had plenty of times where I've recommended something to someone that was very life-changing for me and had no impact on them at all. So I've learned over time that it really is something very personal, individual. It's about timing. And, you know, one thing I want to add to, to what you just said is that because I went into it, it really built and culminated into panic where I felt I was in a very primitive sort of like, I've got to, you know, survive this kind of mode, which shut all my kind of resources and awareness or reduced it. And I think that's part of why I couldn't see any signs or anything. Because if you think about, first of all, how bizarre is it that I got lost the exact amount of time? And how strange is it that tree was just, you know, I don't know, maybe 7 feet away. I didn't see it. Right. So it was like, I think there's something about when you're calm and connected, you're so much more resourceful and able to see all the information or signs that could come in to your awareness because you're here and now and present and resourceful. And when I get scared or my ego takes over, my awareness comes to a very limited.
That's the key description there. Anger, too, that focuses you. Anxiety, that discombobulates you. But when you get to this calm place, you have 360. You can see around. There's relative calms. There's the filter, though, that you also include that I want something from the circumstance. I'm trying to get someplace, so that you are able to scan the environment for the thing that will lead you to where you'd like to go.
It was instant. It wasn't even a scan. I turned and that was it. It was like, here's your reward, Michelle, for calming down. Here's the way out. That's it. We're done. Because that was something that has impacted my life ever since. It's been.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about. I think you were scanning because the scanning goes on whether you know it or not. It's your eyes are saccading around and looking for things, and how much time it takes is what you're talking about. But you were able to, whatever you were calling, I'll call scan, you were able to go find it right away because you had already looked for it. even though you weren't aware consciously of scanning. That's what I would call the difference. But that's not that's not so important. The idea is you were lost, I was lost, and now I'm found. I was lost and I'm found. That's
What
what
song is that? I'll sing it with you if I know. Which one is it? Lost and now I'm found. I can't remember.
it's I think it's
Oh, Amazing Grace.
Amazing Grace.
What?
Amazing Grace. That's Amazing Grace.
Yeah, that's a great song.
It's a great song.
Yeah. And that was a moment of amazing grace. It was. I felt like that was a moment of amazing grace. Literally, it was like I turned, I found my way out, and I think more than anger, what really took me into a terrible state was really shame. Like I felt very embarrassed that had happened to me. And I think shame is even more powerful than anger in terms of shutting us down.
Well, each of us has our own cup of tea in that and that anger. And so let's say for you, shame is a huge one. Let's say for you, anger is a good one for me, and anxiety I got to also. But it's, as we were saying, there's going to be a rainbow of differences on the negatives that restrict you. So you got to know your own that's going to do it, and the combination of them. But now I got you. Shame is a big thing for you, Michelle.
Well, perhaps, yeah, because I think I had an image of myself that was shattered, I think, that day. But I guess an idea that I was a little bit more evolved than I really was, because I wasn't able to stay present. I wasn't able to stay calm. And so, yeah, it was like when I finally, made it out of that situation, I looked back and I thought, so that was very humbling. And I got the best lesson of my life, that when you start thinking, oh, I've got this, or, check again, look again,
that's when I look around, man. I've learned that enough. I've learned that one enough. If I'm starting to get good at this coincidence thing now. So people, the master of synchronicity, somebody goes, uh-oh.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm start looking around, seeing how am I going to get in trouble with this.
Yeah, it was a great lesson.
You got to keep learning that one until you learn it, and then you got to learn it some more, because it just keeps unfolding, that ego thing, that whatever you want to call, I'm really good at this, look how wonderful I am, kind of thing. Bang. Like, right. All right, so there's another one that I was lost in the woods, as another a classical story from someplace, and I didn't know where I was going. And it's almost like Dante's Inferno began that way, if I'm remembering right. There's a kind of being lost and not knowing and in the woods is where it happens, and it's among the trees. And I got lost once in the trees, and it was dusk, and it was getting dark, and I lost the path. And the leaves were all over the ground, so I couldn't see the path. And I did know that if I go down, I'll probably get someplace. And there were all kinds of blocks. There was like a whole row of thorn bushes that I had to get through. I couldn't get around them, so I pretended like I was playing football, and they were like the other team, and I just ran through them. And a bunch of other things. I mean, it was real drama. But that one, I had a direction to go, but I had impediments. And then I hit the path. When I finally hit the path, some guy was walking right there. It's almost like your drone thing. He walked by, and I popped in on him from no place. And he goes like that. Getting lost in the woods can be death. It's scary. Yeah. In the woods, Sebastopol would have been warmer, maybe. It gets cold there too. I mean, it can be
at
pretty
night.
cold.
No, it would have been a cold night.
Would have been a cold night. So you have to face being frozen and hungry. It's to be on the edge like that is a good experience, because it can happen again. And we're talking here about how this applies to your life and your coaching. You're a master coach. Even then you knew you needed to be set in yourself, calm, looking around, and I'm sure that's a major lesson you try to help the people you coach get to, so they can see the opportunities. So tell us about how this applies to coaching, and particularly about synchronicity and coaching, and particularly how that applies to what coincidences you had this morning or today.
Yeah. Right. So today, I told you earlier that today's Thanksgiving, and I'm very thankful for coincidences and synchronicities, because it makes the world feel like a magical place. And there may be, all sorts of science behind how this all works in this, huge web that we're all connected to. For me, it feels like magic. So first, I want to say that day in the forest has helped me through a lot of moments where I've suddenly felt overwhelmed or lost, or, this last 2020 was very difficult. I lost my dad. I lost a lot of projects because I was traveling all over the world with leadership. There are a lot of moments where crisis comes in and I could start feeling like I'm lost in the forest. And I have that so locked into my memory, my experience, that remember, Michelle, the answer or the way out is to let go. It's just to let go, to surrender. So that had huge impact on my life. Still use it today. Super helpful for me. And also humility. If you think you've got it handled, think again. If you think you understand all this stuff, think again. And I think it has me keeps me humble and keeps me searching and learning and reading, and yeah. So in terms of my work, the way I think of this is like, people ask me like, what are the ingredients for powerful coaching? And to me, this is the same ingredients for using synchronicity or having synchronicity play a role in your life. You bring the ingredients. The ingredients, I think, are, presence, listening, attention, observing. Maybe there's also humility. You can bring all those ingredients into a conversation, pull someone else into a state of presence, and the conversation that goes from there can be full of synchronicities, because we've created sort of a bubble, and this is an encounter in which synchronicity can play a part, because we are in a state in which we're able to observe and notice things. That if you're speaking really fast, you're distracted, your two people are coming together, maybe superficial conversation, or even maybe to argue about something, it's highly unlikely that it'll be so easy to capture synchronicity. I'll give you an example. So today I've recorded some coachings today because they're for training purposes. So I had a client saying, I just imagine I have all these doors in front of me and they are locked. And she was talking about what to do next in her life. And she said, it's just, I don't even know how to knock or ring the doorbell of these doors. I just, I look at them and I don't know how to knock or ring. And in that moment, the doorbell rang in her house. And it was just like the timing is, as soon as she said it, it rang. And I said, what was that? And she said, she was absolutely shocked. And she said, maybe someone's going to knock on, a ring or whatever. Maybe somebody's coming from the other side. Like, instead of me having to go open the door, maybe somebody is coming to open the door for me, right? So it turned into a beautiful metaphor in the coaching. And then there was a second moment when she referred to the door again and someone knocked on the door. So she was just blown away by that. Like, oh my God, what is this? And I said, this is just us being present and connected and noticing what's happening. Normally, if you're not having a coaching conversation where you're paying attention to those things, you would keep talking and you wouldn't give it importance. But part of being present and connected and aware is noticing what things are coming in from the environment that can play a part in your conversation and can be a point of inflection or a turning point that's really important in the coaching. Because when she said, maybe there's someone on the other side, because I said, make up a story about that doorbell that just rang. And she said, maybe there's someone that's opening the door. Who might that someone, what does that mean? What does that symbolize? And it opens up a whole new conversation or part of the coaching that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And another thing happened today where
Wait a
somebody
minute.
was,
Wait.
yeah, go ahead.
You're moving. You're
I'm
moving.
talking really fast.
You get excited. So I'm gonna.
Yeah, I do. I get very, I get very
You get
excited.
excited when it's fun, but it's
Yeah.
like, who's that knocking on my door? Is a 50s song.
Or knock, knocking.
Knock, knock,
Oh, that's
knocking. Yeah, yeah,
different.
that's a different one. That's good. That's good. That might be the same one. So what you just did there was take the knock on the door as a jumping off metaphor for her to project into what
Yeah.
she might want to have happen. So you could see you triggered her imagination in doing that. What you
Right.
did was what these micro serendipity things that I was talking about at the beginning. This was a micro serendipity. It was just a knock at the right time, and you
Twice.
twice too. I mean, we just do the first one, but twice, then you got something else going on. That you then seized that small event because we miss them.
Yeah, exactly.
We miss them,
normally.
as you were saying, we miss them, so that you seized on that, and that's an important part of a lot of serendipities, is that you get these crossings of events, but that you don't necessarily grab them to see what they might be doing for you.
Right.
So being able to move, that's why my next book might be called The Dog That Trots About Finds the Bone. You got to move. You got to move. You've got to act in order to have a meaningful coincidence take place. And that's what you just illustrated. And you had, in addition, the belief that there was something potential in that metaphor. But you also knew when you get a coincidence like that, you're going to pop the other person. They're going to get what? Because you got popped. And that pop will drive imagination.
Right, exactly.
And that's what you corralled at that moment for both of you, and particularly for her, and showed her. It's like the tree pointing in the direction that you needed. This could be another, I saw the sign for her. So you taught her in the moment, not for what happened there. You taught her that she should look for more of these in the future, because they also might be signs of a direction to go in.
Right. Right. And if she had any doubts when it happened the second time, there was no doubt. She was the one that pointed it out and said, this is too strange, right?
She got the second one. She got the second one.
Yeah, we let the first one was a doorbell and the second one was a knock. Yeah, isn't there a song, somebody's knocking at the door, somebody's ringing the bell? Do you remember that song? I don't know who sings it. But yeah, for her, it was like, obviously, if I had ignored it because I was coaching her, we would have moved right through it. And she would have said, oh, sorry about that noise or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's what I said about ingredients. If you bring in a belief that the environment can have impact, and that there could be something that happens if you're paying attention that contributes to the coaching and taking it to another level, then that's why I was saying earlier, you bring your presence, your listening, your attention, your ability to observe, and your belief that that's possible, and then something can happen.
Amen, sister. Amen, sister. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Hallelujah. You were going to tell us a second one before I slowed down your enthusiasm.
And it has actually, it's funny that you mentioned a dog, and the dog walking around with a bone or looking for a bone in order for, I understand what you're saying.
And before you go, that funny is really important here, because one of the great ways to do coincidences, yes, is to see what songs they trigger, because they can, but there also can be jokes. They can be funny. And then now, and you say, it's funny that I was talking about the dog, because now you're going to tell us the rest of the joke.
Well, I'm going to tell you that this next story has to do with the dog.
Yeah.
And I told you earlier about songs that a lot of times I'll have an issue, a problem that I'm grappling with, and a song will come into my head, and I'll realize that in the lyrics of the song, there's something interesting for me. So I love playing with songs and why a song comes into your head. The second story, this is also coaching from today. Both of these are from today. This was, and again, I have permission, written permission from them, because these are training coaching recordings. So this person was talking about needing to be, it was all about, I need to express more love in my life. And I put myself in a box and so on. And she said, suddenly she said, I heard her dog snoring. That's what it was. Her dog was snoring so loud. She had the most adorable dog in the room with her. And I said, wow, that's your dog snoring. And she said, yes. And I said, what would your dog say about this right now? And she said, well, actually, and there was this pause, and it was like, oh, something really good is about to happen. And she says, my dog very often comes to give me affection and lick my hands and do all these things. And I push her away all the time. I realize now this is really about me being able to receive love. I have a hard time receiving love. But it was like this aha moment with the dog, because she realized, I don't let my dog, I push her away. I don't let her give me affection. This is the real issue, right? So this was, it was again, like a turning point in the conversation, because we were focused here, and suddenly the snoring dog brought the coaching into a totally new direction that was deeper and more true to what she needed. So
it's so cool that you can get that on tape too, that you can record that sort of thing.
So I can share it with people and say, look what happens when you pay attention to everything that's happening, everything that's showing up.
And now you can see why people get psychotic around coincidences, because the filter to pick out what's relevant becomes distorted or too expanded, and everything seems relevant to me right now. And that's
an interesting thing. So I was explaining to you earlier, we were talking about the reticular activation system. I think with coaching, a lot of times I have people visualize their desired future and get connected emotionally to what they really want, because I know that will put an internal GPS to work. So if they want to get better at speaking in public, and they visualize over and over again success speaking in public, what will happen from then on out, because their mind has locked that in as this is important, is there is a filter system happening, where because you can't take in everything in the environment, the reticular activation system is filtering out for you. So you might suddenly be reading the newspaper and see an article about speaking in public that you wouldn't have noticed before. Or you're in a conference room and you overhear somebody talking about a speaking coach, and you wouldn't have heard it, because now your internal GPS is going to work to actually get you to where you want to go. And you could call that synchronicity, you could call that neuroscience, because now you're filtering out and seeing signs that are like signposts on the way to where you want to go, because your mind is helping you.
I think I might call this episode "I Saw the Sign."
I saw a sign.
It's funny to have you describe it now as neuroscience, and that's really good. The correlate is important between the brain and the mind here, and I've been fascinated most of my psychiatric career with the interface between the mind and the brain. It's the hard problem of philosophy, and it's a fascinating problem about what the nature of reality is.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because in psychology, it's called a recency bias. If you see one thing, and then you're going to be more likely to see it again if you just saw it before. And
right.
that's a different way, similar way of feeding this, what you're calling internal GPS. What I have a way of thinking about internal GPS. You've described it some, please describe it some more, what you mean by the internal GPS.
Yeah. So first of all, this is, from the reading and investigating, and I am not a neuroscientist. So this is just what I've studied. I have worked with Olympic teams and the Spanish Olympic Committee with elite athletes work a lot with visualizing, right? Like, Michael Phelps, or, they'll visualize everything before they do it. So that, I've learned that that does a series of things, but maybe the most important thing is that when you visualize, it's very, your brain doesn't distinguish between what's real and what you visualized. And so it can raise your confidence, and it can also have you recognize opportunities. So it's a little bit like if I told you I really want, I would really love to have a red BMW. And I imagine myself driving in a red BMW and enjoying what it feels like to roll down the window. And I mean, I get my whole experience and my emotions involved in visualizing this. Now it's locked in. And when I go down the street, I'm going to notice any red BMW that's driving, that, you know, that passes me by. Whereas before I probably wouldn't have noticed it, or a red BMW that might be parked in a parking lot, you know, across the way from where I'm parking, because now my mind is noticing these things that are deemed important or have been decided, you know, in my mind that are significant or important to me.
There are certain limits to what you can imagine and you can get. And that's a very important part of all this, because a lot of people aren't going to get red BMWs, even if they want them. There are plenty of impediments to get in the way. So I think it's important to recognize, as I had to do on the football field, the guys who want to tackle me, no matter what I'm trying to be out there doing. But I have a question related to this. And it's a somewhat of a leadership question, because I'm the leader of the Coincidence Project. And I'm saying, I'm listening to you, and I'm trying to think how I think about the leadership of the Coincidence Project. I started this with our mutual friend, Juliet, more than a year ago. And neither of us had any idea about what was going to happen with this. I mean, nothing clear. And it was a kind of, the fun about it is just like wanting something to happen and not knowing what it is, but just keep going. It was stumbling through the woods in the way that you were stumbling through the woods, but nobody had ever been here before. And we didn't know where we were going particularly, but just wanted to have something happen. And now we've got this Coincidence Ambassador group that's getting formalized enough to have a vision statement and a mission statement, which I will send to you and hope you comment on. And there are other connections that I'm making that include Randonauts who have an app for increasing coincidences, and it's 1 million people are using it around the world, and it gets them to go places they wouldn't have gone before and see what happens, which is another way to increase coincidences. And I'm connected with a international lawyer in Santa Barbara who wants to do an app to help increase coincidences in a much different way, where you connect with people almost like a dating site who are interested in the same kinds of thing that you're interested, among other things. And we have a Coincidence Cafe, which meets once a month, where you can get serendipity at the coincidence. So you'll be invited to that just because we've been doing this. And Juliet organizes that thing with leaders in it. So we just started sitting around, two of us, talking about it. And this is some of what we've got, but I didn't imagine this. I had a feeling of wanting to do that. So how does that fit in with the way you think about leadership?
Well, you know, what's interesting is, as you're talking, I was thinking about, you know, how does it work? So first of all, the red BMW example is just an example. It's just a very simple example. But you could say, so it's kind of like what we were talking earlier about the power of intention. So if I imagine and visualize something, and then suddenly I notice it, you know, is it a coincidence? It's difficult, because would it have been there had I, you know, it's like, that could be a coincidence that it's there. And now I notice it, and there's two things happening. One, I've dreamed it up, I've imagined it, and now my mind is filtering it, and I can, you know, filtering out other things, and I can see it. But also the fact that suddenly I see 3 or 4 red BMWs after imagining it. That's a coincidence? Would they have been there? Were they there? Do you know what I'm saying? It's difficult to know, like, the nature of reality. There's two things happening, right? So the fact that I imagined it and now I'm seeing them everywhere, it doesn't mean that they were, you know, we don't know for sure what that.
It doesn't mean they weren't there before. That's right.
Right. What I'm saying is, it's all very mysterious, but what I do know is I think working as a coach and in leadership, one of the most important things I can do for a leader is to help them align with, their values, the best version of themselves, visualize it and visualize where they want to go, because it's far more likely they're going to recognize the signs and the opportunities to get there, to become that, to get to where they want to go, as opposed to putting out fires and living, day to day, and not actually projecting their desired future. So I think there's something about in the world of coaching, learning to accept and love what is while you're dreaming up the future, because that will allow you in the present moment to see the signs that will get you to where you want to go.
Well, there's all sorts of need of giving things up that I have to do with this. I mean, that, or surrender is the word you use. I do let it go. It sounds the same. When you find yourself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me.
Speaking words of wisdom, let it
be. I mean, that's right there for what we're talking about. This letting it go or letting it be, and the different words we might use for it are a very important part of this. And I'm just pretty much along for the ride on this, but it's fun to be steering it sometimes and go this way or that way. But I didn't have an idea. And now that I have to do a vision statement and a mission statement, because I got hassled, don't let us, said the Coincidence ambassadors, do the vision statement. You do it because you started this. So,
right.
Okay. I have to become more of a leader now and not be so passive, which is what I have been, to try to just organize it. But now I'm making a vision statement. And this is to use coincidences to illuminate hidden connections or hidden threads, so that we can build a cohesive network of people doing with the heart and mind, as you are doing, to do something about not just the group that comes to us, but the larger part of humanity that needs to get tuned in to some of the things that we seem to be discovering that have to do with those words, love and caring. And my favorite is, the greatest thing you can ever learn is to love and be loved in return.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's true.
And it's from Nat King Cole's Nature Boy. That's a line that I just was singing with someone as we were talking, as we were dancing. We both were singing that. It turned out to be a bad relationship, but it was a nice romantic moment.
Moment.
I had a moment.
Moment in time.
You got to just take those moments. You got to take those moments.
Yeah.
Magic moment when we were together. Yeah, that's
I'm all about the magic moments. It's what I said earlier, is that this is Thanksgiving, and I'm so thankful for the magic moments, for the moments that seem magic, whether they're magic or not. The fact that I perceive them as magic is
magic is follows rules that we don't yet understand, and that's all it is. It is magic for us now, and it's fun to live in a magical world. Michelle, I am just detecting that you have not grown up.
Like Peter Pan. I'm a female version of Peter Pan.
It's becoming clearer to me, Michelle. You're still a child, filled with the wonder of what is, and meet another one.
Oh, that's good.
Another one. Because
I love hanging out with adult children.
You're just doing that right now. I'm one of those, and behaving like an adult has been a bit of a strain. I was chairman of a psychiatry department for 17 years.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my badness. I learned a lot from that, and it's helping inform this, because the Coincidence Project needs an adult sometimes. I've got to be like that, because I still can be a child playing adult and kind of knowing it, because it's fun to be able to see what happens. And like my younger son in an art museum in Washington, D.C. at age 9, where the sign says, "Don't push this button."
And of course, right.
And they kicked us out.
Oh my God, they
It was
did.
a
Wow,
fire
they get
alarm. It
harsh,
was a fire alarm. So
get hard. Oh, I see.
he pushed the button and they kicked us out. He has been doing that a lot in his life. And he got that from his father, unfortunately, but he didn't get the brakes on it to
Yeah.
try to see,
What happens? What happens if I do this?
yeah, what happens if I do that? You
Yeah,
learn to do that within a more constrained environment if you want to survive, because
right.
he's overdone it in some ways. So he's coming back and being able to do it, but he still loves to do it. And his dogs particularly like, well, that's another story. Well, being as you're an athlete coach, I want to tell you another story and see how you think about this one. I played football at Swarthmore, a small college near Philadelphia. It was small enough for me to play and become a star. And my senior year, in the fall, before we were playing Johns Hopkins, I walked away from the playing field, the practice field, and got 2 practice dummies and set them up, and then got a football and walked about 10 yards away from the the tackling dummies, and put my back to the dummies, and got down crouching with the football, then turned around and ran between the 2 dummies, and then did that same thing again, ran between the 2 dummies, and went back to the practice field. 2 days later, I returned punts. I was like waiting for the Johns Hopkins kicker to kick me a good punt. He was a bad kicker. So finally, I hear the announcer and I see the ball going up in the air, and it's a good kick, and I'm happy. But I have to turn around and catch it over my shoulder coming that way, because it was a better kick than I thought. So I turn around, I grab the ball to catch the ball, turn around, and there's 2 Johns Hopkins guys coming at me, just like the 2 tackling dummies. I ran right through them and went 90 yards for a touchdown. How does that fit into your sports things?
Well, how does it fit in for you? I mean, the first thing I hear is that, I mean, first of all, mysterious that you would be practicing that. So it's like, I think, wow, is that intuition? Is that a part of you that knows it's preparing you? And the fact that you practiced it a couple of times speaks to what I said before, where now there's a way that you're filtering out and your mind knows, right? This is the way to go, because you've already, stored it as a memory. I don't know, what is it for you? What do you think, what impulse or intuition were you following when you set up those 2 dummies and you did that? That's where the answer is.
In many ways, I see us human beings as puppets on strings. And there may be a puppeteer, which I kind of think is sometimes my higher self. A lot of people say universe. I said, well, what's universe? Well, they tend to mean God and don't really say it, because that's kind of not the thing to say. Or they might mean the all oneness. And I'm saying, okay, what all one? What is that? And I heard a physicist talk yesterday about the purpose of consciousness. I said, how do you know what the purpose of consciousness is? He says it's to evolve. Okay, but that's a description. Why does consciousness want to evolve this thing and have us in it? What's free will and all this stuff? Well, I don't know. I'm a bottom up kind of guy. And I just take what I see in front of me and climb the ladder of awareness. I'm based on like connections to the earth and my body and experience. So to me, this was like an example of precognition enacted. It was enacted precognition. So I had the experience, a literally clear experience of a precognitive knowledge that, okay, it just proved to me that you can do that. You can know something ahead of it happening. That's what it did for me, so that when other people talk about knowing stuff into the future, and for people who, like you, have dreams in which you sense that someone is dying, or you know something is going on, that kind of connection is possible. That's what that tended to show me. But how it works, I have my ideas about, but I call it the psychosphere or mental atmosphere. It's here on Earth. It's not out there. And that I am trying to help map the connections that connect us in the psychosphere. That's what I'm doing. That's my vision.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I mean, I think it's putting words and processes to something that we wonder about, and I think the more clarity you get around this, and the more you investigate it, the more you can help people actually proactively put it into use and get the benefits of it.
Yeah, and
right?
that's what you're
Because-
doing too. You put it into words. So sometimes as we get near the end of our time today, we're reporters for a great metropolitan newspaper like Superman, but we're reporters of experience. We experience them
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah.
We see them in other people. And then we try to take these 3-4-dimensional concepts and put them into words that other people might be able to understand.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the idea of, you don't have to know how it works, but if you bring presence and observation, awareness, and maybe a little bit of faith that there's something out there, that's all you need.
A little bit of faith. I believe for every drop of rain that falls, a flower grows. I
would
believe
sing,
that
but I don't
somewhere in
know that one.
what?
Oh, I know, you gotta have faith.
Go ahead.
You know that one, George Michael. I gotta have faith, or you gotta have faith.
Yeah.
Anyway, maybe we're singing from different time periods. Are you a George Michael fan?
I have been, but I haven't liked. I don't know that song, but
Oh, you don't?
I like.
That's a great song.
Do it. Do it a little bit. Do that.
Oh, it's all I know. You gotta have faith.
Ah.
Or it's either I gotta have faith or you gotta have faith.
Well,
But
it means
repeats
both
a
of
lot,
us.
the word faith. I consider faith and believing in things we don't understand as a sort of superpower that helps you get there. Because if you don't believe and you don't have faith, then it's going to be very hard to open your awareness and look for signs.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So any closing songs for us, Michelle?
I feel like I've been so clumsy with all of the songs so far.
We both have been, but we try.
I'm not a singer, and so yeah, it's probably difficult to recognize anything I sing. I think a closing song, you touched a sensitive chord when you brought in Mother Mary speaking words of wisdom. And I'll tell you that one time I had just moved, and it was one of those, I moved into a new apartment. There was no Wi-Fi. There was no hot water. It was one of those, everything, there were boxes everywhere. And I remember I was just extremely, again, not resourceful, in a very primitive mode, super irritated and frustrated. And my young son asked me to stand up, and he started dancing with me, and he sang that song in my ear. I'll never forget it. He was young. I didn't even know he knew that song. And he just said, "Let it be, Mom." It made me cry. And I thought, wow. Yeah. So maybe my closing statements are, I think when you stay open and present, there are all sorts of mysterious or inexplainable things that come in as allies or guides if you let them. And that day, that was my young son.
Beautiful. Thank you very much for being with me today, Michelle.
Thank you for having me.
This psychosphere is our mental atmosphere, like a hologram of cosmic consciousness.